A late-night breakthrough could herald an end to BC's long-running port dispute, as another tentative deal has been reached between the union representing 7,400 BC port workers and their employers. Joining us now is Andrew Wynn-William, Vice President of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Sonia.
All right, so we don't know all the details yet, but we are hearing that both sides of the negotiation are recommending ratification of this deal. How are you feeling? Are you optimistic that this will be the end of the road?
Well, we're hopeful it'll be the end of the road. I mean, it's a shame that it took this long to resolve from our perspective. We think the federal government should have stepped in much more quickly. From our perspective, we surveyed our members a couple weeks ago, and about 2/3 of them at that point were already feeling significant impacts, and the average impact by those members who were feeling that was estimated at about $200,000 per day.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not definitely not the first person in the industry to, wonder why the federal government did not act sooner. There were calls for that, and we know that with a similar strike in Montreal a few years ago, the federal government did step in with back-to-work legislation. What do you think was needed in order to actually reach this deal? Do you have an idea of what was in the agreement that finally made both sides say, okay, we need to ratify this?
No, I don't have insight into the details of the agreement. I know that one of the sticking points was automation. From our perspective, automation in the manufacturing industry only makes us more competitive and more effective and creates more jobs. So I'm not sure why automation was a sticking point in this case. But circling back to the federal government, I think we think that they need to have more tools and be more aggressive in using them, because you mentioned the Montreal port strike earlier. That agreement that was legislated then is up on December 31st, and the industry just can't go through all this on the East Coast in another 6 months. I mean, it'll barely, the whole system, will barely recover by then anyway.
So what would you like to see then going forward? Because we can see the impact that this is having right now. We know it's going to take, as you just said, several months to iron out all the delays here. What kind of action would you like to see from the federal government?
So there needs to be something that they can activate more quickly before going to having to legislate someone back to work. They need to move to the binding arbitration measures far more swiftly than they have been. You just need to look at that. This agreement, they had the opportunity to negotiate it months in advance, and yet parties waited until the last second, and the rest of Canada's economy suffered as a result.
Yes, and we do know that there was an independent body that was brought into, it was the Industrial Relations Board that helped them reach this deal. So maybe have it, in place where there's a certain protocol followed, where a body like that would come in a little bit earlier, and maybe right at the very beginning, or hopefully months before, to avoid the potential of a strike.
So that's the sort of thing we would like to see, where issues of national economic importance are at play, with where it's our national infrastructure, and it goes beyond just job action. They need to think about other things that have disrupted our port infrastructure or our transportation infrastructure that could be preventable. So, for example, blockades that happened, in the past couple of years as well. These things, when they combine with port strikes, et cetera, start to not only impact us economically, but they start to hit on our credibility.
All right. Yeah, certainly it is. It's going to take a long time to iron out all of the delays, and there's also the question of how much it's going to impact inflation. As we already know, prices are rising for everything. So with a further delays to get those products, it could have a bigger impact. But I guess we'll wait and see on that one. But Andrew, I want to thank you very much for joining us today with your insight.
Thank you, Sonia. Good to see you again.